Hey everyone, so today I'm changing my drum brakes out to disc brakes using all OEM parts off of an EX Accord. The reason that it's important to have the knuckle is because these two bolts here are where the brake caliper mounts to, and on the LX with the drum brakes, this knuckle does not have that mounting point. So I'm going to start by removing the actual brake hardware itself back here. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take off these 4 bolts that hold the trailing arm on. So there's one right here, there's another one right here, and that also holds on this bracket that is holding the fluid line hardware. Here's a view of the lower underside. So here's the other 2 bolts on the trailing arm, and they also have a little bracket in front of it, and I'll be taking that bracket off right now. This bottom one here is the only one I can actually get my impact on. I just use an open end and a hammer to break the rest of them loose. Once I get that bolt off, I pull that off, and I just set it aside for now, because I'm going to need it later. Now these top 2 nuts on the trailing arm, I just do it the same way. I just get an open end on here and I break it loose with a hammer, and then I get those off. So I'm just finishing up, removing those top 2 nuts. Now I'm not removing the trailing arm yet. That'll be the last thing that I actually pull off. I just want to break it loose. I'm going to leave this bracket for right now. I'm not going to remove the brake line until almost the very end, because I just don't really feel like having it dripping brake fluid around on me. Next thing I'm going to take care of is this upper control arm. So first I got to get the little cover off of here. Once that's out of the way, I just got to bend my cotter pin out. Those straightened up. I think this is literally the most difficult cotter pin I've ever taken out. Holy cow, come on. 17 millimeter gets this one off. I'm just gonna run it to the end for right now. Now, I gotta pop that ball joint loose. I'm gonna use a hammer, and I've had the best success hitting about right here, but with these I kind of just tend to go all over until it pops free for me. There it goes. Next I'm going to be removing the slide pin that goes through both of the lower control arms. So there's a control arm here and the further back control arm here. So there's a long pin through them. This is the nut on the back of it, and the other side of it is right here. I'm holding my open end on the other side of it. Nut came off on the back side. This is going to be pretty hard to pull out. I'm going to tap it out a little bit. Actually, I'm going to try this first. There it is. Okay, now the only thing left holding the whole knuckle assembly in here is my strut assembly is still attached, and I'm still sitting on these slide pins on the trailing arm. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to break loose my brake line, and once I have this taken apart, I will go ahead and enlist the help of my floor jack to support this, and I will get this loose and pull it off the control arm. So let's get this. I'm using a 10mm flare nut wrench to get this off. So that'll break this loose. And I also need to get this bracket undone, because I am going to be using my original brake line here. This is just fine. On the EX's brake line, it attaches to the mount just like this, and it comes to the same spot, and I'm just going to join them together, and it's just that simple. Alright, so I've got that loose. Now I'm going to go ahead and get this little mounting bracket off of here. Or I should say holding clip, I suppose. It's essentially what holds the brake line. Once I pop this out, the brake line is going to fall out from back under here. Channel locks will also work. And now the brake line will fall out of here. And I can get this whole bracket off after that once this is apart. So this, I'm just going to bend this out of the way because I don't care about it anymore. And pull that bracket off. And there we go. Okay, so now I want to get this parking brake loosened up so that I can pull it. I want to pull it out of here. I want to have enough slack, and I'm probably just going to cut it right about here because I just find that to be easier. So in order to give me some slack, I'm going to first break the first bracket loose is this one here, and there's another one under the car. I believe they're all 12mm, so let's see. Yep, this one's a 12. So let's break that loose. There we go. And I'm going to save this hardware because the new line has brackets in the same spot and it will go on the same way. The pin kind of stays in there, so just put the nut back on here so I don't lose it. Alright. Now this here is the next mounting bracket back from the control arm. Now I'm probably going to need to drop this heat shield later in order to finish getting my brake lines in, but I'm not going to do that right now. I need to get the front of the car jacked up, so for right now I'm just going to use an open end to break this loose and get it off of there, because that will work. Alright, now I'm going to remove the bottom of my strut. 17mm bolt here. I have a 14mm holding the back because I don't have OEM struts anymore. On the OEM struts, the nut on the back is actually welded on. Now I've enlisted the help of my floor jack to hold this up for me, because the only thing left after this is the trailing arm, and those bolts aren't hanging on to anything anymore. Try this little rubber, it's almost like a grommet. Doesn't really seem to have any purpose other than holding this in here. Let's get that out. Don't really care if I destroy it, it's not getting reused. The new one doesn't have this. There we go. That's a little better. And that's just sliding right off now. Okay. So the knuckle is now free of everything except this parking brake cable. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to cut this up. So I'm cutting through this now. I'm going to use a pair of side cutters and a hacksaw to get it undone. There it is. I'm just going to get this old brake cable pushed through here. Probably should have cut the other side. Now I'm going to install the new one basically in reverse. I'm going to get the slide pins into the trailing arm, and then I'm going to get this off of here first, and then I'm going to get this in through the bottom of my my strut. Get it slid on. It goes onto the back too. This comes up just like that. Now I'm going to get my bottom of my strut in here, and I'm going to make sure that this control arm is already kind of up close to where it needs to be, because it's a real pain to get it in there later if it's not right to begin with. Using a screwdriver to help me out a little here. There we go. Next, I'm going to line up my lower control arms and get this long slide pin back inside of there. There's a little metal sheath kind of thing that slides in that one. I'm going to put this lower trailing arm bracket on, back on under here. Because there's no reason not to, really. And a slightly better nut for the back side of this than what was there. I had just been using one from the top of the strut tower when I changed it to the strut. Here's the back side of that large slide pin, so this washer goes on there like that, and then gonna get my upper control arm reattached now. Here's my castle nut. And since I destroyed the old cotter pin, I have a new cotter pin that I'm going to be putting on there. 17 millimeter, tightens it back down. I need to get that lined up with the hole. Just a little bit more. That looks good. Gonna get my new cotter pin in there now. It's my cotter pin on there. I get this little cover cap that goes over it. Oh, I need to bend that in a little more. $10mm for this. Don't need to kill it. Alright, so now I'm going to get my new brake pads in here and my caliper on. I'm going to start off with this one that has the wear indicator on it. The wear indicator goes on the inside of the brake pad facing down. It should be on the bottom, or the way that the wheel rotates into it. Before I put it in, this came with a little bit of grease with it, with the brake pad. So I'm just going to put it onto the sides here that are going to be moving inside along this metal. So, and a little also, there's a spring on the top that presses onto it, which is inside the caliper. That's going to be touching up on the top up here. So I'm just going to squeeze a little bit out and rub it along the sides here. Now on the other side. There's one. Now it's time to get my shiny new caliper in here. Well, it's not actually new. I just I painted all of that while I had it this week, so it would look all nice. So I'm gonna start by feeding my parking brake cable in here, just so it's kind of in its place already. And it goes on the back side of the strut. My caliper on here. Now I've already pushed this back into here. I've got new pads, a new rotor, so I'm pretty much already set to go. I also greased these slide pins up with fresh silicone, and they're moving real good now. They were a little stiff when I got them out of the junkyard, but now they're moving great. So let's get that in place. Now the way this goes, it's up through here. It goes in front of the knuckle. So just kind of fall right into place there. Two screws hold this bracket in, two 10mm fasteners. Not gonna quite tighten them down yet until I get this other side lined up. Now before I tighten that back on, here's where the other bracket goes. So here's my old brake cable, which I'm going to use. Now there's still a brake cable here on the new one. I left it there because I was afraid that I might get sand and stuff in the end of this, dragging it around through the junkyard. So that's why I left that, because I didn't really have anything to cover it up with, which I think was a good idea. Seemed to work out for me. So I'm gonna break this loose apart, get that old brake line off there, and I'm gonna attach mine onto there next. Alright, I'm gonna go ahead and put one of the nuts on the back of this bracket, one of those 17 millimeters. They were the very first things I took off to help me hold this bracket on here before I break this brake line loose. Okay. So get my 10 millimeter flare nut wrench again. Definitely want to use the flare nut wrench because this is the brake line that I'm keeping. So I don't want to strip it out. With that loose, I'm going to go ahead and start getting this clip off again. Let's see how stubborn this one is. Get it started with my screwdriver. And finish it with a pair of channel locks. Get that off there. There we go. Alright, so that's separated. I just need to wiggle the old one out of here. Get my original brake line back up into here. There we go. Replace my clip. There we go. Right back. This was the old parking brake cable. Here's the new one. Now, that's the next thing I need to do is get that parking brake cable on there, which means most people will shut off this video right here. But wait, this is probably going to be the hardest part of the whole video. I'm going to try to do this without dropping the exhaust, because that is just a real pain. But if I have to do it, it's what I'll have to do. Alright, so I'm about to get the center console part out so I can get to all my brake hardware now. Okay, normally there'd be a screw right here. This one's missing, but that needs to come out in order for this whole centerpiece to come out. Next part's inside of here, this bottom panel, and I'm going to use a small flathead screwdriver to pop that up. And then there are two more screws under here that will get this free. Usually there's that third screw underneath the cup holder, but like I said, wasn't there. So get these out. Pulling up the parking brake makes it a little easier. Okay. Now that's out of there, I can get to the parking brake hardware. So I'm going to need to remove this center, there's two of them, to free that, and then I'll be able to pop these out of here. They come out of there a lot more easily once this bracket has been taken off. So a 12 millimeter gets this off. Now this can be pushed up like that and it'll come off. And then once that's done, it's a lot easier to remove these. It's like a little slit there to get them out with, so just Pull them sideways and pop them up and out, just like that. And they're free. Now, the hard part here is that these go down underneath all the way back here. Around in here is where they dive down through. Now, I don't want to have to pull all of my carpet up and out of here just to get to that. I'm hoping that I can avoid that. If I have to pull it up, I'll pull it up. The other thing is, on the underside, there is a heat shield in the way for the passenger side parking brake cable. That's going to be the hardest one. The driver side one is not too bad, but this passenger side one, going to be a real pain. So now here's where things get tricky. So this is the old emergency brake cable or parking brake cable. As you can see, it goes underneath this heat shield that goes along the exhaust system. Now I'm going to attempt to drop the heat shield by itself without dropping the exhaust and hope that I can get in here well enough to get all this out of here and get the new one in. So it's held on by a 10mm bolt over here, and there's another 10mm bolt right here. So I give up on the idea of just dropping the heat shield because it's just way too difficult to work around this exhaust pipe. So I start back here by removing these two bolts to separate this piece here. It's just in front of the rear wheel well. Pretty easily done with the impact, although probably didn't even need the impact to get it off, honestly. And if you're wondering, that jack in the back there isn't supporting the car at all. There's like a gap between it and the tow hook. I just leave it there just to be safe. Now I knocked over my camera, but those two isolation rubbers right there were the ones that I removed when the camera had fallen over. And then this next shot, that isolation rubber right there is the one that I'm removing next. I have a little bit of trouble with it. So I struggle with this for a few minutes at this point, and I finally just sort of throw my hands down in exhaustion because I'm literally exhausted. And at this point I come up with another idea to try and get this to drop down. So what I do here is I notice that the top part of that rubber isolation rubber is held onto a straight bar instead of having like the curvy little hook that holds them up. And what holds it onto the bar is a sort of rubber spacer and then a 12mm nut at the end. So here I break the 12mm nut loose. I had to use my hammer there to help me out, and then I unscrew it off, and out it comes in just a moment. And then here's that little rubber spacer right there. And now that's out of the way, I'm able to pull the whole exhaust kind of over down that straight bar, and it finally drops down for me. Now with that out of the way, I'm able to get this last 10mm bolt off of here. What this bolt does is it actually holds both the heat shield that's right here at the top and the heat shield that was in the rear. It was, I think, the last thing keeping me from getting the heat shield down, actually. So once I get that out, I'm able to pull that rear heat shield off and drop it down onto the floor. You can see it right there laying on the floor now. And then here I'm just unfastening one last 12mm bolt that is holding on the parking brake cable that I wasn't able to get to with that heat shield in the way. So I struggle to pull the brake line out. It's pretty tough. There's like a rubber boot up at the top that sort of holds it that it was getting caught on, but eventually I get it out, and there it is. And now I begin the process of getting the new parking brake cable routed over here. I begin by sort of just running it along the line of where the old one ran, which is pretty much along with this exhaust, which is part of what really made it necessary to drop the exhaust down, unfortunately. So another 12mm bolt. I think they were all 12mm bolts that held the little brackets on that were attached to this cable. So I get that attached. And once that's done, I prepare to feed it up there, and there's my roommate's pants, as you can see right there. I needed help with this. It was just too difficult to do it on my own, so that's why I asked him to come out here and give me a hand. So here I go, I feed it up into there, and you can see the rubber boot right there at the end in my hand. That needs to be pushed up into there. It's a little bit of a bite to get it back in. It was probably one of the harder parts of this, actually. But getting it pushed up into there under the carpet wasn't actually too bad. I get it pretty quickly here, as you'll see in a moment.
You got it? Okay. Don't really pull on it. Just hold it. Just hold it for right now. I got it. Yeah, it's fine. Just hold on to it. Don't lose which one it is.
I know which one it is.
Okay. I've just gotta. There's some mounting hardware in here. I just need to reattach.
That's cool.
Okay, so back in the car. Both of them are pushed into here, so I just got this one in here. I had to get my roommate to come and grab onto these as I fed him up into here, because it was just too hard to do by myself, honestly. So one side's in there. Get the other side in here as well. And once they're both in there, I'm gonna pull up on these and get this bracket back on. Now with the parking brake cables attached, I want to check and make sure this can still spin, and it can.
Apologies for the lighting here. My camera got really dark for some reason, but here I'm going ahead and lifting the heat shield back into place and getting that 12mm fastener on before I quite bolt that heat shield down. Now here I'm getting the two 10mm bolts that held the heat shields together. Basically, the heat shields kind of had an overlap right here, and those two 10mm went right through both of them. Here I am putting another one of the fasteners back on the heat shield a little bit further back before I get that exhaust pipe on. And one more right there. Now I hang the exhaust pipe back up, get that hanger back together pretty much the same way. There's that little rubber spacer, so I get that on, get the 12mm nut back on, and then I just nail it back down as it was. Now I get the exhaust pipe joined back together. Pretty easy. The first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to remove the master cylinder and its reservoir just to get it out of my way, because there is almost no room to get down in there to get on all those screws. So I'm going to start off by breaking the two brake lines loose here, and for that I'm going to use a 10mm flare nut wrench, because I really don't want to round off any of these, or I'm going to have to go get another brake line. The master cylinder is held to the booster by two bolts. They're both 12mm, one there and one over there. Another thing I'm just going to get out of my way now is these vacuum hoses. I had already knocked this one off over here, so I may as well give myself as much room as possible and just get them off of there. Now with the brake lines loose, it's pretty easy to get onto that bottom 12mm with just an extension on the end of a ratchet. So that's what I'm going to do. Pull these up out of my way. And just come right under here. For the one on the back side, I'm going to use this to get on there, because it's pretty tight. And there we go. Not a whole lot of space. There it is. Okay, last thing before I pull this out, I just want to detach these cap wires. I could leave the cap in here, but I want to leave the cap on. I don't want brake fluid to go everywhere. And these just pull apart in the center. Little plugs. Just like that. And out it comes. Okay, with that out of the way, I can get you a better view. Alright, so that is the proportioning valve. As you can see, it's got the two lines that come up here to where the master cylinder was. And that's it right there. Now, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this with a very good view from the camera, but the first thing that I'm going to try and do is see if I can break loose all of the lines off of here. Because if I can't break these lines loose, then I'm screwed from here. Now I'm definitely going to be using my flare nut wrench, because I really don't want to round these off. And certainly want to make sure I'm pulling in the right direction. So I'll start with this one going to the rear. Let's see how this goes. Alright, that wasn't so bad. One down. Moving on to the front two. Let's see what we get. If I can get on here. Alright. Come on.
one's gonna be hard. I also have very little room in here. Oh, okay. Broke loose. Not too bad so far. This other one looks a bit rusty. I should have sprayed some penetrating oil on it, but I didn't. We'll see how this is gonna go though. Again, if I can get on it. Extremely little space. Come on. Okay. Oh. Now the next issue is, how do I get down onto the next set that are further down with these in the way? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this line here that used to go up to the master cylinder to give me a little more space. So I'm going to start off by getting that one off first. Okay, so I've gone ahead and I got that brake line out of here. Now I'm going to go down to the next lower one, which is this one here that came up to the master cylinder, and I'm just going to remove that one as well so I can get space for the two that are closer to the wall here that go to the front brakes. Come on. Oh, here we go. Alright, so I'm gonna finish unscrewing that and get this line out of here next. You can see it came loose now. Alright, all I gotta do now is remove the two front brakes on this side. This is one of the brake lines, and the other one you can see below it. So I'm going to try and break those loose next. And if those break loose, then I'm almost on the home stretch. Except of course there is another rear one down here. Just haven't figured out how to get to that one just yet. Alright, so I'm about to break loose the last one on the front. If I can get on it. Oh, you got it. Yeah, I got it. And I'm using my regular 10mm to loosen them up the rest of the way, because just need the flare nut wrench to break them loose, just to make sure I don't round them off. Now I'm going to attempt to break loose the last one, which is underneath of this bracket that actually holds the whole thing on. So it's down under here. I can't see it. I'm just gonna have to feel around for it and hope that I'm gonna have enough room to swing this around, and if I don't, I'll probably break this bracket loose off the wall first and try and move this thing around till I can get this on there. Alright, so I've admitted defeat on getting my wrench under here in any sort of way. I just can't do it, so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to use a 10mm wrench with my extension and my swivel to get onto here. There's two 10mm bolts that hold this on. So I'm going to break this back one loose, and then I'm going to take the other side completely off. I was able to get on it like that with just my short extension and my 10mm. Just going to try and get onto there with the extension now. There we go. Spin that. And there it is. Now I need to get the rest of these brake lines off of here completely. because I'm going to turn this in its place. Alright, so I've just gotten on to the final one down here, and I'm about to attempt to break it loose. So here it goes. If this breaks loose, I'm good. It's bending the whole bracket. Wow. Come on. Ah, yeah, there we go. Alright, so I've successfully removed that last brake cable. Now, I just need to get this other bolt off. Alright, so this is the old proportional valve that I got out of the car just now, and this is the new one that came out of a Honda Prelude. Now, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this because it's not very clear, but on the side here, there's a number right there, and it reads 2025. That's a proportioning valve that's come out of a car that has drum and disc brakes. Now, the new one, if you look closely, it reads 3540. That came out of a Honda Prelude that had all-wheel disc brakes and no ABS. Now, this part, the reason I got it out of a Prelude is because you cannot get this part out of an Accord EX. It doesn't have it. Because when they started doing all disc brakes, it was in 92, I believe, and when you get all disc brakes in an Accord on the EX trim, it also comes with an anti-lock braking system, and when there's anti-lock brakes, you don't have quite this exact same part, and that's because part of the job of this proportioning valve is to help keep the rear brakes from locking up, because rear brakes can lock up early, and when brakes have locked up and the tire is sliding, it's actually got less traction than if the tire was still rolling and being slowed, if that makes sense. Now, this bracket is not going to work. I'm going to have to change the one off of my old one, and I just want to note that in order to get these apart, there's just these two screws here, and they're T30 Torx screws, and they're the security kind. They have the little bump in the center to get them off, and when these come apart, this valve does separate down the middle. So that's pretty much what takes the whole thing apart, but unfortunately gotta pull it apart in order to get the bracket off. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna get this apart, get my my bolts out, and get my bracket changed over, and then get this guy back in the car. Alright, so I've got it together. I've got it in the orientation that I need so that it's the same as the other one was. Time to get it back in the car. Okay, so a progress update here. It is the next day. I ended up giving up after 3 lines and starting again today. It's now the morning. Now, getting this top one in wasn't so bad. This one wasn't too bad. However, the one all the way down here underneath the bracket that's under here, very difficult. and the bottommost one, not this top one, but the one below it, right down there, below my finger, also very hard. So what I did to make this a little bit easier was I removed one of the mounting bolts on the bracket here. I removed the one that was on this side because it's easier to get to, and I broke the one under here loose. That way I could have a little bit of wiggle room here to help me get them in. That's only helpful getting the first or second line on. Once I had 3 lines on there and I was working on this one last under here, it was pretty stiff to the point where I couldn't move it anymore. Now this one in the front, the thing about this one is you can get to it from the wheel well. The wheel well is right here. So what I ended up doing was I ended up jacking the car up, taking the front tire off there and getting in from under there and grabbing onto the line and moving it around till I could thread that nut in. I had to get my roommate out here to help me do it. I'm gonna get my fuel filter back into place. I had moved it just so I had this extra room to push it out of the way and get to that bottom one. It's held on by a 10mm bolt on this side, and on the other side it just has a little clip that sets in place. So I just gotta set the clip in the hole and then get this through. Get the screw in here. Getting in the brake lines that come to the master cylinder now. Alright, there it is. It's in there, and the 2 lines that come to my master cylinder are back in place. That was a real bite to get in. So I've got my fuel filter reattached, and I also broke the bolt loose on the top of this that holds the high side pressure line for the power steering. So I'm going to go ahead and get that back together, and then I'll reinstall the master cylinder. Now I'm returning the original LX's master cylinder back in. I kept it in a bag all night. If you're wondering, it really didn't leak at all. It stayed pretty much dry. The reservoir is still full, so no issues with that. And my seal stayed inside the booster, so I just left it there. Now just to get my brake lines back on. Get these in here.
Started.
Finish up tightening it with a flare nut, just to be sure. There we go. Yeah, I'm gonna get my 2 wires reattached that go to the cap. This is for sensing the fluid level inside the reservoir. That's it. Everything's in. Time to bleed the brake system now. Alright, pump it. Hold it. Oh boy. Okay, pump it. Hold it. Oh yeah, getting a lot of air out of this one. Hold it. Pump it. Hold it. Okay, so got the car back down on the ground. My wheels are torqued back down. One thing I checked before I put all the wheels on was to make sure that I didn't have any leaks or anything anywhere. And I also wanted to check over here to make sure that this proportional valve isn't leaking at all. And so far, it looks perfect. I don't see any leaks anywhere on it. It's nice and dry all over. Also dry over on my master cylinder. So just a couple more checks I want to do, and then I'll take it for a test drive. Alright, so car's running, I'm sitting in the driveway. So one thing I want to do is I want to make sure that this parking brake is going to be working before I even move out into the road. So I put her in reverse. As I go back, I want to make sure that that can stop the car even while in reverse. And it did. Alright. Drive. Forward. Stop it. Good. So that's functioning. The car does move just fine when it's down. Now, I was going to say I'm going to test the brakes with my feet, but I was just kind of doing that instinctively without thinking about it. So here's me using the brakes. So they do work. Alright, seems good.